Was this threat assessment distributed to the cabinet, yes or no?
I believe I've said earlier that it was.
It was. And this was the only threat assessment provided to the cabinet or to the Prime Minister prior to the decision to invoke the Emergencies Act.
Is that we knew that CSIS assessment for the purpose of the application of CSIS Act was done, and that CSIS concluded that for the purpose of their act, the level of threat was not met.
And was that view shared with the cabinet? Yes or no?
I mean, I can say that I knew. I think it was shared in previous IRGs, but that was not news for us when we gave the advice.
But I'm sorry, just a simple question. Was that assessment shared with the cabinet, yes or no?
With the full cabinet as opposed to the...
Yes, at the February 13th meeting. Was that assessment shared with the cabinet, yes or no?
The fact that CSIS didn't feel that there was a national security, that there was a threat,
Yes.
security of Canada required to invoke the CSIS
Yes.
powers and authorities.
Was that shared with the cabinet, yes or no? Or do you not know?
I'm just testing my memory, sir, to make sure I'm giving you the very best information. I believe that Mr. Vigneault did not speak at the cabinet.
I mean, and here, as I said, we knew that it was shared in previous IRG. And, you know, some of the cabinet members were not member of the IRG. So I don't know if that element of CSIS was clearly said during full cabinet, but for sure, some minister, and the Prime Minister was aware of that.
But you're not saying that you don't know if that view was shared with the full cabinet at its meeting on February 13th.
I cannot confirm that.
And
What I can confirm, though,
Yes.
is that the threat, as we defined, both the clerk and myself earlier here this afternoon, in terms of the threat coming from, all elements, and I won't go back again, but from transport, GAC, and others, that was discussed.
Sure.
And can I go on to add one thing, which is in the discussion at Cabinet, I'm going to be careful here, in the deliberations at Cabinet in terms of the considerations related to the invoking of the Act, it's fair to say that there was a discussion about the nature of the threat environment, the legal threshold, the tests for invoking, and the evidence that the thresholds had been met.
But you don't know if Mr. Vigneault's assessment was shared with the cabinet.
So just one thing.
Yeah.
Mr. Vigneault's assessment on the fact that invoking the Emergency Act can inflame the situation, that was shared. And we've heard that also from provinces.
And I'm not asking you about that.
Yeah.
I'm asking you about what he stated in the previous paragraph of his evidence. Do we know if his views...
So I think we answered that we cannot confirm that. I think I share with the best of my knowledge that I'm sure that some ministers were aware of that, key ministers involved in the management of the convoy, the members of the IRG, that the Prime Minister, was aware, but I cannot confirm whether or not it was discussed. That CSIS reports to the Public Safety Minister. What he said, we cannot disclose, and to be honest, I really don't know. So I cannot confirm that.
And so have you had a chance to review Deputy Minister Stewarts' testimony from this week?
Well, I've listened
To part of it.
to part of it, yeah.
So I'd put to you that under cross-examination this week, Deputy Minister Stewarts testified on Monday that CSIS was not asked to provide this assessment to Cabinet. Do you have any reason to disagree with Deputy Minister Stewarts' testimony?
I believe I said, Mr. Chowdhury, that Mr. Vigneault did not speak at the cabinet meeting.
Thank you.
Therefore, he did not speak, he did not read that into the record himself.
So I now would like to turn to the memo, Ms. Charette, that you wrote to the Prime Minister.
You're going to have to make it very quick.
Sure.
You're way over time already, and
Okay.
I'm generous, but there are limits.
There are limits, I know, Commissioner. And in the memo in which you recommended to the Prime Minister that the Emergencies Act be triggered, you were aware of Mr. Vigneault's view, but nonetheless, you determined that there was a threat to national security, correct?
We can go,
Yeah.
I'm happy to take you through my logic again if you'd like. I was aware that Mr. Vigneault felt that there was the threshold for CSIS
Right.
to launch an investigation under the CSIS Act was not met.
Good. And you relied on the National Security and Intelligence Advisor's view, who kind of integrated, as she put it in her testimony yesterday, information from across the federal government to arrive at her view that there was a threat to national security under the Emergencies Act.
She was one of the advisors that I relied on, sir. She was not the only advisor that I relied on.
So I would like to put this point to you,
Sir?
that in a constitutional democracy, to prevent the abuse of executive powers by an elected government, it is imperative that the views of a professional, nonpartisan, and expert security services be front and center. And that they not just be a factor, but they be at the core of whether a government decides to invoke emergency powers. And what you've said today is that you're not sure if Mr. Vigneault's views were before the full cabinet. They weren't set, you've distinguished the legal relevance of his views. And you're suggesting that what the security sector
Are you
agencies say
coming
isn't
to a question or making a presentation?
Are you suggesting that what the CSIS says isn't at the core of what makes it reasonable to determine if a public order emergency exists?